What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats, as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 3. And in today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the WSP Swarm. And starting it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile, and with this gun, it's a bit of a pea shooter. It is going to be a 5 to 8 shot kill depending on the range. And it's also worth noting, in that maximum damage range where you can get a 5-shot kill, all of those shots have to hit the torso or arms if you want to keep that 5-shot kill potential. If you mix in just one leg shot, it will now be a 6-shot kill. As for headshots, they're practically useless with this gun. Don't even worry about them at all. After that, let's get into our rate of fire stat, and this is actually tied with the Fennec 45 with having the fastest rate of fire in the entire game at 1,091 rounds per minute. And what this means for our time to kill potential is if we get a 5-shot kill, we're killing in just 220 milliseconds, which is crazy fast for body shots in this game. However, the main thing I want to point out here is even when you drop off to a 6-shot kill, we have a highly competitive time to kill at 275 milliseconds. This is still better than average for SMGs, and that's excellent to see, and it's just due to the really fast fire rate of this gun. Now, just to provide some more context here, let's have a look at all of our range values compared to the other Modern Warfare 3 SMGs, and as you can see, that 5-shot kill potential is tiny with this gun. It's only 4.6 meters, which is very, very close range. However, our 6-shot kill potential extends out to 19 meters, which is pretty solid for an SMG. And again, like I said, that time to kill in the 6-shot kill range is still excellent with this gun. So it really doesn't rely on getting that 5-shot kill. And generally speaking, if you're just keeping yourself in that 6-shot kill range, you should be performing just fine with the WSP Swarm. Now, it is also worth noting our bullet velocity is not terrible, but also not great by any means at 450 meters per second. And this just means that you don't want to be challenging gunfights at longer ranges, but that's fine because the recoil won't allow you to do that anyway, but we'll look at that in a little bit. Before we do that, let's have a look at our hardcore range values. And unfortunately, the WSP Swarm can only get a 1-shot kill to the torso in that maximum damage range, so 4.6 meters, which is tiny. Generally speaking, this is going to be a 2-shot kill in hardcore, which isn't great, but I mean, with a really fast fire rate, it's still a usable gun, just like everything is in hardcore modes. But then let's get into our hipfire, and our minimum hipfire spread is pretty standard for an SMG at 2 degrees per second. Whereas our maximum hipfire spread is actually the best out of all of the Modern Warfare 3 SMGs at 5.7 degrees per second, so that's great. However, let's get into the big downside with the WSP Swarm, and this is our recoil. This has the worst recoil out of any of the Modern Warfare 3 SMGs, and it's not even close. As you can see, the magnitude is quite high, it'll kick up a lot. It also leans to the left, which many people, myself included, are not a big fan of left-leaning recoil, and it's much easier to control right-leaning recoil for us. But on top of that, when you look at the initial shots fired, there's almost always a giant gap at some point between those bullet holes. And that's what can really throw you off with the WSP Swarm. And there's only so much you can do to that with attachments as well, which just inherently limits this gun to being more of a close to mid-range gun. And no matter what you do, it's never going to excel beyond mid-range. In saying that, it obviously excels a lot if you keep yourself right up close and personal and you play very aggressively, and this is further supported by the handling stats. Our aim down sight speed is incredibly fast at 175 milliseconds. This is the fastest in the SMG category. And it's a similar story with our sprint to fire time. This is also incredibly fast at just 88 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and roughly 165 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. And then finally for handling, this leaves us with our reload add time, which is unfortunately quite slow for an SMG at 1.6 seconds. And this is something that really does come into play as well because you are going to be burning through magazines really, really quickly with this due to its insanely high fire rate. So this is the type of gun you typically want to pair with mag holster or just a larger magazine. And then finally, for the base stats of this gun, let's get into our mobility stats, and we've got great mobility across the board. It's actually a little bit above average for SMGs in every area here. And that's excellent. You can get around the map really quickly, and your default strafe speed is at a great starting point at 3.4 meters per second. And there we go. That's going to wrap it up for the base stats of the WSP Swarm. However, we do have an aftermarket kit with this, and this is the Akimbo Kit. So you can use 2 swarms, 1 in each hand. However, with this kit, it also completely changes our damage multipliers and profile here. With this, we still deal our base damage to the limbs, although this is a reduced damage value. Then we've got a separate lower torso value, and then after that we have an upper torso, arms, and headshot damage profile, so we don't get additional damage to the head while using this in Akimbo. You're dealing the same amount of damage as the upper torso, and if you're hitting that zone, this is going to be a 6 to 8 shot kill. But of course, since we can fire both guns at the same time, effectively speaking, this is kind of like a 3 to 4 shot kill, assuming all of our shots hit, which I realize we're looking at this theoretically. In practice, you are going to be missing shots more often because you can't aim down sight with this. Now, unfortunately, in order to ensure that these didn't become completely overpowered, they also significantly reduced our rate of fire with each one of these guns down to 667 rounds per minute. So that's a massive slowdown, but it was necessary because even with that crazy reduction to our rate of fire, our time to kill potential, assuming perfect accuracy, is 180 milliseconds to the body up close, and that only drops off to 270 milliseconds at range. And both of those time to kill values are insanely fast, and if they would have had the standard fire rate for each gun, this would have been the most broken gun in the entire game, so I get why they had to cut the rate of fire down for balance sake, but it is a little bit weird that it does that. In either case, those are the important stats that come with the WSP Akimbo Kit. Now let's move into some excellent attachment combinations, and don't worry, we will be revisiting Akimbo with the final setup. But the first setup I wanted to share for you guys is my quote-unquote accuracy build. And I put it in quotes here because this is still not going to be nearly as accurate as most of the other guns in the game. But with this, we're using the Rival 9 compensator muzzle, the Bruin Heavy support underbarrel, the Mark III reflector optic, the FSS Fortress Heavy stock, and the Marauder grip. And as you can see, this very nicely improves our recoil compared to the base recoil on this gun. But in saying that, especially with those initial shots fired, you are still going to see some pretty crazy jumps to your recoil. And as a result, this doesn't suddenly make this gun viable at longer ranges. It just makes it so you're going to be a lot more consistent within the ranges that you should be using this gun, which I would say is within about 30 to 40 meters at most. But the nice thing about this is even though we put pretty much everything into our recoil with this gun, our starting point with our handling is so good that we still get a very impressive handling with this particular setup. Our aim down sight speed is 214 milliseconds, which is still crazy fast for this game. And it's basically the same thing with our sprint out time. This is only slowed down by a few milliseconds, so you won't even notice this. You're still going to have a ridiculously fast sprint out time. And while we do lose 10% to our ranges, I do feel this is worth it to make sure that you're hitting your shots a bit more consistently, because what good is an extra 10% to your range if you can't even hit your shots at those ranges? So that's the first build I've got, and it's a good all-arounder as far as the WSP Swarm goes. It still lacks in versatility, but that's just always going to be the case with this gun. As for the next one, I wanted to share what I call my balanced stealth build. So with this one, we are using the Shadow Strike suppressor combined with the DR6 hand stop, the 40 round magazine, and then once again, we have the FSS Fortress heavy stock and the Marauder rear grip. Now with this one, it's not as accurate as the previous build, but it is still noticeably more accurate than the base recoil with this gun, so it helps a bit there. And on top of that, our aim down sight and sprint out times are actually slightly improved, which is crazy because they're already so good by default. And of course, we are staying off the radar with this build. And with this one, as long as you play it right and you ensure that you take gunfights in close quarters situations, you're going to be absolutely dominant with this setup. In saying that, the moment you start to stretch those ranges out a little bit, you're probably going to start missing a lot of shots that you would otherwise be hitting with a more accurate gun. And as a result, the effectiveness of this gun will drop off very harshly the moment you start stretching out those ranges a little. And then finally, I've got one more build for you guys, and this is my Akimbo build. And with this, we're of course using the Akimbo brace stock, that conversion kit. We're using the 40 round magazine, the Marauder grip, the S37C DL breacher, and then finally the Schlager ULD66 laser. And with this particular setup, the crazy thing is our minimum hipfire is literally 0.0. And I did some testing with this. For the first shot that you fire, even when standing up, you don't have to go prone or anything for this. Even just while standing still, the first shot that you fire will always be perfectly accurate to that dot in the middle of your screen. Every single time. You can see I fired 10 bullets total, 5 from each gun here, and every single one of them went into the exact same hole, as long as you're just tap firing between shots. Now, obviously, once you go full auto, you're no longer getting your minimum hipfire. It starts to spread out towards your maximum hipfire spread. But even our maximum hipfire spread while moving or while firing is very reasonable at 2.5 degrees per second. So this is actually a pretty incredible Akimbo build in this game. The only downside is our sprint out time is noticeably increased compared to the base, and that's just another balancing factor they had to introduce to make sure this Akimbo kit wasn't completely overpowered. And overall, this is an excellent build with an amazing time to kill potential. You can absolutely find a lot of success with this particular build. And just a quick bonus tip, if you are using this Akimbo build, I'd highly recommend that you combine it with the assault gloves, because that means every time you jump, your hipfire spread won't increase, whereas without assault gloves, it will be increasing quite a bit. And that's where we're going to wrap up today's gun guide on the WSP Swarm. As for my thoughts on this gun, I really like it. It's one of those guns where it's obviously not going to be like the best choice in every situation. It is not versatile at all, but it makes up for that by being completely dominant in close quarter situations. And it's one of those guns where if you treat it right, you'll find a ton of success, whereas if you don't, you're probably going to struggle a lot. And I think that's great. I do think having guns like this is very important in the game. It's definitely not going to be my all-arounder or anything, but I love just pulling this gun out for those close quarters maps, or if I just want to try to navigate a map in close quarters. And if I do that, I can do very, very well with it. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts on the WSP Swarm, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this in those comments down below. Also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description of the video. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.